So in this class, what we are going to do is we are going to take a dive into full stack, how it actually works. Full stack basically is made up of three parts. You have the backend, you have the front end, and you have the database. The backend is generally written in Node.js. The front end is generally written in Angular, though it can be Vue.js, though it can be Bootstrap, it can be vanilla HTML or JavaScript, it can be your React. Backend can be written in Node.js, Python, Java. Databases can be anything from both SQL to NoSQL. SQL can be something like your PostgreSQL, Oracle SQL, or MS SQL, or MySQL. NoSQL can be anything from MongoDB, Apache Cassandra, and so on. So this is how it looks like. So this is also known as the three-tier architecture. Okay, so you have a front end, you have the backend, and you have the database. Backend will process the information from the database, and the front end will be the place where that information will be displayed. So this is what a three-tier application or three-tier architecture looks like. In this session, we are going to talk about main stack, MEAN. M stands for MongoDB or the database. E stands for express or the middleware between your front end and your back end, basically this part over here. A stands for Angular, which is your web or presentation layer over here. And N finally stands for Node.js or the backend, which I have over here. So main stack, MEAN, or three-tier architecture. In today's class, we are going to go and deploy all the things inside AWS. First of all, we'll create all of them, a sample page for them, at least something which actually works in real time. And once that is done, we'll go and deploy it to our AWS and to whatever cloud provider we have. To make it even more complex, for the database layer, instead of going for directly inside AWS, we'll be going for MongoDB Cloud. The advantage of that is MongoDB Cloud, first of all, is a cheap option. Second thing, if your AWS goes down, it doesn't go and affect your entire infrastructure. So assuming your AWS goes down or AWS a specific database goes down, in that case, because this is hosted on MongoDB Cloud, it won't hurt you and your machines or your infrastructure is still going to work. So this is what our class today is going to be. It's very well understood that maybe you don't understand anything out of it, because at the end of the day, what I'm going to do is coming from someone who is working into this environment, and right now you are just viewing the process. So don't understand how it's happening, what's happening. Just understand the process, that okay, first I need to create something as a front end, then I need to go and create something as a back end, then I need to go and create something as a database. These three processes, just to make it better, we'll also go and sync them in real time, deploy it to AWS, and actually see how the various applications are communicating with each other. Those who are only interested in AWS part might want to join back at 11:45 a.m. However, if you want to continue, that's your call. So to get started, first of all, we'll have to create the web or the presentation layer. Inside this, we'll be creating Angular, this part Node.js, this part MongoDB, as I have already told you. Next thing, we need to create a sample project. So what I'll be doing is inside the web or the presentation layer, I'll be creating a login page. So let's say a user will log into the machine or the UI over here, give the ID and the password. This will flow down to my backend. Backend will go check the ID password with the database. If it matches, it will respond back. If it doesn't matches, it will still respond back saying that your ID and password is incorrect. Okay. Again, don't worry about what is happening. Just look at the process, which is more important for you. Those who are in full stack, don't worry. This complete thing we will be doing for the next 2.5 months. So it's a long way down over there. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So first thing that we'll be doing is we'll be creating our web UI or our simple login HTML page. Don't worry about beautification of the CSS. Don't worry about how the page looks like. At least the functionalities should work. So what I'll do is, first of all, let's go and start working on that. So I'll be creating two things over here on the desktop. One will be our full stack and front end, and one will be our backend. Okay, so desktop here, and let's create a folder, let's say as full stack. Let's go inside that full stack, and inside this, let's create one as backend. And similarly, let's go here. Let's go inside full stack and create one as front end. Okay, let's go inside front end. And the first step that you have to do is to install Angular inside your machine, or to install that particular Angular project inside your machine. I'm also starting VS Code over here in parallel so that we can understand how the project structure is going to look like in real time. Okay, so for that, let's just go and drag and drop our full stack project over here. So this now will have two things. It will have the full stack, which will have the front end and the back end. Right how they are null. In some half an hour, they should be filled up with all the information. Okay, so let's start with our Angular. So first thing inside Angular, if we need to go and create a Angular project, we have to go and create it by writing ng space new space name of the project. So let's call that as a login page. If you do this, it's going to go create a new Angular project for you inside this folder. So now what you are going to see is over here inside front end, in some time you will see some information being popped up. Okay, would you like to add Angular routing? Yes, I prefer SCSS, though it depends on you. It will automatically go and create certain files for you over here. As you see, it has started to pop up. It will start to go and create certain files for you. And eventually, this should happen in another 2 minutes. In the meantime, inside Angular, we will be using something known as Angular Material. You might have heard about material design a lot actually. If you are using an Android phone right now, with the interface that you are working on is your material itself. So we are going to use that Angular material. So let's go and have a look at the library over here. So if you have to get started, Angular, the beauty is everything is already present for you. So just click on get started over here, and it will tell you that you just need to go and run this command, ng add Angular material. Ng is your Angular command. Add will go and add all the dependencies of Angular material over here. So going back to my folder, it is still installing. Let it happen. We'll wait for it to happen. After that, we will go and start working on ng add Angular material, which eventually will go and install Angular. Now, the beauty of our Node.js and Angular as an environment is something known as NPM. NPM stands for Node Package Manager. NPM is the biggest repository which is present for any type of code that you need. Now, consider it simply as a library. Like you have libraries in your Java, like you have libraries in Python, similarly, you have libraries for NPM. These libraries can be used by Node.js as backend, AngularJS or Angular.io or Angular as frontend. If you are using a web app, it inside React or React Native or Vue.js or Ionic or Apache Codeva. Anything that you are using, the libraries in turn that you will refer over here will be NPM itself. Now, okay, ng command is the default one, or okay, if you need to install it manually, you can do that also. But in some time, we will see that why is it a bit tricky to install it manually. Though actually speaking, in real time, we go and deploy it manually. Okay, we will see that right now in some time. Okay. Anyways, by this time, I have seen my packages are all installed. My code base is all set. Everything is done, which means we can go back to our code over here, front end login page, and I indeed see certain things coming up. My advice over here is the moment you do this, just go and run something known as ng serve or npm start. What it is going to do is go and have a look at package.json. The moment you do ng start or npm starts, it goes and does something as ng serve. In short, it's going to go and run this Angular server. It's just like running your Apache web server. It's just like running your React or Vue.js server. If you go and do this, it will automatically go and run this project or go and run this particular program. Now, first of all, let's have a look at it, why it didn't work. The reason for that is error number one, you need to run this inside our Angular project. If you pay attention over here, I was running this inside my front end, but this code is not inside front end. Inside front end, there is a folder known as login page. So if you ever see this error, the serve command requires to run in an Angular project. The reason is you are not inside that exact Angular project. So let's do ls, and I see that I am inside login page. And next step, let's do ng serve. Doing this will start my Angular web server at the port number 4200. Though if you want, you can go and modify the port number also, that we are going to see in future. For now, this default configuration is good for us, and I should see certain settings or certain things coming up inside my UI. Primary of which is, if I expand src, I am going to see something as index.html. Index.html is pointing to something as app-root. If you go to app and you go to app component, you are going to see app-root, which basically means it is telling you to open app component HTML. So you open up that file, and this is the thing that you are going to change. In ideal scenarios, Angular itself is advising you delete the template below to get started with the project. That's what we are going to do. But just to check out if my Angular is all installed and everything is working, we will just go and do a run of it. Okay. So as you can see over here, Angular itself is advising you that, again, it is a placeholder. Remove everything from line number 1 to 508 if you want to start our Angular project. Now, next thing that happens when you do a ng serve or a npm start, even if you do, it's going to go and change over here. So if you do npm start, eventually it will run ng serve itself. Ng is the base command of Angular. Anything that you do inside Angular will start and end with ng only. Apart from the places where you want to go and install few specific commands, in which case you do npm install. Now, if you do npm installs, the things that are going to get downloaded to your folder will show up inside your dependencies over here. Now, again, take it with a pinch of salt at the moment, because in the class, actually, I'm going to show you how you can go and play around with your node modules over here, which is nothing but the libraries which are required to run this project. How Angular or NodeJS or any of the JS frameworks, or rather the new JS frameworks work, they will go install their own dependencies inside their own folder. Advantage of this is, even if the libraries are not present tomorrow, you at least have a local copy of it. Next thing, the Angular version which I am working on is Angular 12. Though this is not the latest one, it is Angular 13, which is latest one. So still Angular, if you go, okay, just have a look at it first over here. The latest version is 13.1.1, which was released 30 days ago. The preview release was 12.2.0 RC0. We are still working on Angular 12 because, generally speaking, anything with even number 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 is the latest or is the long-term support release. So that is why we went for Angular 12 over here. This part, Angular 13 released few days back, has some bugs, so we went for 12. Anyhow, in the class, once we start, we are going to start with Angular 13 itself. Anyways, going back, it says that my code is all up and running on localhost 4200. So just go and hit localhost 4200. And if I do that, I should be seeing certain things coming up. Okay, so like I see login page app is running, resources, here are some link to get you started, which means that indeed my Angular project is working the way it should be. Just to test it out, if everything is good, Angular works on the concept of hot reload, which simply means if you just go and change anything inside your code and provided your ng serve command is running, this page will automatically reload Let's do a test of it. So here it says resources, and then here are some links to get you started, right? So let's go to the code over here, and primary to my src, app component ts, and my HTML over here, and see, I see this link, right? So let's go and just modify it. And save it. The moment I save it, you see Angular automatically recompiled everything. My terminal or my shell recompiled everything. Next part, over here, this thing automatically refreshed and it says I should see the updated code. At this point of time, if you see everything till here, it means at least your Angular has successfully been installed and it is running. This is step number 1 to get started with Angular. Let's begin with the next part. Next thing that I wanted to do was to install Angular material, isn't it? So how to do that? Getting started here, copy this command, stop everything at the moment, paste it, and it should take care of itself. I don't have to do anything on top of it now. Let's close everything else. This part, it will go to install all the dependencies which are there, which will go and set the icons in index.html. It's going to go and tell me how to modify it. This part will come important in some time, app.module.ts. In some time, when we start seeing a strange error, dependency is not found, then remember I had told you that if at all you are installing any packages, you always have to do the entry for it inside app.module.ts. You see, app.module.ts is the first file that Angular is ever going to run. Meanwhile, let's go and install this. It will ask for few settings, so let's just go and do that, or else it will keep on waiting for us. The theme, let's take this one itself. Do you want to set it? Yes. Browser animation, yes. It will also go and update our package.json file, which was the file over here, which was the file over here. That is why it also says M on top of it, because it has been modified. If you are interested in knowing what exactly has been modified, this green line over here is telling you that someone has added Angular material, which is version 12.2.13. Generally speaking, Angular material is also the product from Google itself, and Angular itself is the product from Google. So if this is working on version 12, material also has to be 12 only. That's pretty much understood. Next part over here, go to SRC and go to the files over here. Let's say app. You will start to see few things have changed. By the way, something has also changed inside index.html, which is nothing but my Angular font library has been added. This, by the way, is the exact thing that happens on your phone every day. So it is saying that inside my main index.html file, I have also added the Google fonts, or primarily the Roboto fonts, which means if in future you need to go and add or remove few fonts, you can do it very easily by going and adding it to your index.html file over here. Okay, fine. If this all is done, I have everything set up. Let's just go and do ng serve back again. Over here, I'm not going to see anything new as of now. It's still going to boot up. It's still going to go and show me my index.html file only. But now we can actually go and start to code. And what we want to code over here is changing our app component HTML. But before that, very fast, let me show you one short thing, your angular.json file. This is the master library inside your Angular. If in case you have messed up anything inside your Angular code, it will always be because you have changed something inside angular.json file. When big companies are looking for migration and they want to go and migrate something from Angular 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 or whatever it is, this is the file that should bother you. This file over here, if you see, is saying that I will be creating, or the main file that you have to open is main.ts. If you go to src and you go to main.ts, this is telling you the file that you should open is app module. So you go to app module. This is, by the way, the reason why I told you that anything that you do should go inside app.module.ts file. And the reason for that is my app module file is the master file that is having any imports. So anything that I create inside Angular has to show up inside my app module file. Following the trail, app module is saying you should ideally go and open app component file. So I open up my app component ts file. Okay, it says over here, have a look, app.component, and anything in Angular is TypeScript. So it opens up app.component.ts, which basically tells you you have to go and open app component HTML, and it opens up app component HTML. And basically this is the page that you see. So just in case if you are wondering why did I land up inside this page, it is all because of this setting. Angular JSON tells you to go to main file tells you to go to app module file tells you to go to app component tells you to go to app component HTML, and this is the page that you actually see. So if we are good till here, next step is to go and simply create my login page with two buttons, two text box rather, ID and password, and one button to login. To get started, just like Angular says, let's go and remove everything over here. And now we are telling Angular that, okay, any path that you go to will follow from the path of router outlet. You see, router outlet is something like I say localhost 4200/login, or I say google.com/login, google.com/video, google.com/video/add video. How are these paths being decided? These are all being decided with my router itself, or router outlet itself. So what I do in this case is I have my router outlet file. I go to my app routing, and over here I will have to go and generate all the routes or the path which I expect to show up inside my code. For that, what I will have to do is, first of all, let's go and generate few components that anyhow Angular was also telling me that if you need to go, why don't you go and generate few components. So I'll create two components over here. The short form is NGGC, and let's call a component as login. G stands for generate, C stands for create. So sorry. Okay, so NGGC login, which basically means NG Angular generate component named as login. So if you go back to your code over here, you are going to see something new coming up, which is login page. Okay, similarly, I'll also go and create my dashboard. So NGGC dashboard, just two simple pages, nothing much in that. So two pages done, login, this, and dashboard. Now comes the interesting part. First thing first, I have to go and create my routes, and the routes have to be created because if anyone is navigating to my path, it should know where or which component it has to go to. So first thing that I need to do is import from, and my path is login and login component. If this part is done, let's go and take the next one also, which is nothing but my dashboard. Here, let's call this as login component. Let's call this as dashboard component. If we are good till here, next step is to define the routes. So I'll say something as path. If anyone is not looking for any path, in that case, navigate them to login component. Why? This you might have seen. If you go to any website, by default, you are forwarded to your login page itself. This is the reason why it happens, because the default path is set. Next, let's say if anyone is looking for login page, you should anyhow take them to login component. Next, let's say if anyone is looking for dashboard, you should take them to dashboard component. And next, let's also give something. Maybe someone gives a path which doesn't exist. In that case, what do I do? In websites, again, you would be knowing the answer. In that case, you again go to login component itself. Okay, So in this case, the paths are all set, which means if someone goes inside any of these paths, it should actually forward them to that respective component or the submodule of my code. First of all, let's go and test it out by going and doing a ng serve over here. If you have any questions, you might want to type it down in the chat window. We'll have a look at it. Okay, if everything is good, let's go back to our code over here, 4200. And it says login works because it has taken me to login page. And why it has taken to login page? Because I decided that if I don't give anything, you should take me to login component. And what is actually inside login component? Login component is saying open app login component HTML, which basically is this page over here, and it says login works. But by that logic, if I go and put /dashboard over there, it should take me to dashboard page, right? Where it should ideally say dashboard works, right? So let's go and do that here. And it indeed says dashboard works, which means at least my 2 pages are all good and they are all set also. So I can now go and start to work on those particular code. So next step over here, I need to go and create my login page and login page HTML. I need to go and create 2 text boxes. Along with that, I need to go and create a button, which is going to do the job for me. So for that, let's get started with our Angular material. What I will do is, first of all, let's go and take 2 text boxes. Text boxes, let's take it from a form field over here, which is something like input and over here. So this input should be good for me. Let's go and take the code of it. This part here, mat form field, let's remove entire this. And let's put a mat form field over here and mat form field over here. This let's call it as ID. This we will call it as password. So let's go back to our code and see first error that we see is failed to compile. And why is that? For that, it's always wise to go and open the developer console, which you can go by clicking here, clicking on more tools and clicking on developer tools. Next part, go to console and it tells you that there is an error in the code. And what is the error? It says mat form field is not a known component. Going back to our discussion, when I told you that if you need to go and add anything to your Angular component, you should always go and add the entries to app module TS. And what was that? Go to API, you are going to see something as this mat form field module. Let's go back and just add it to app module TS over here. And this mat form module, let's go and add it to our imports over here. And if everything is set, it should now go and show me my module. So first of all, let's go have a look at it. It should refresh by now. Recompiling, let it happen. Okay, now it is, if you see, because we added that, it is compiling everything. The libraries of Angular we had already set when we did ng add. Let it compile. Will take some time. And okay, now at least I don't see any error, but I need to go and have a look at login where I should at least see 2 pages where I see the next error that mat form fields should have something as mat form field control. And this error generally happens when you have to go and get any component of mat. This is a very general error that you will see inside Angular each point of time. Is there so much discussion about it? So this one, you see all of these are same errors only, but anyhow, let's go and fix it. But if you see, you are seeing 2 text boxes over here. There's no problem in that. Now the reason why you see this error is because there are some other dependencies also which you need to go and add along with this. The first one being something known as a form. You see, Angular works on-site the form module. So you need to go and have a form module if in case you are working on any of the forms. So for that, let's go and get Angular / form. And what I want to import here is at least form group, form control, form module, and reactive form module. Primary thing which I need is my form module. So if I go over here and just give my form modules over here. So this part here, this here, let's have a look at it now. Okay. Now, next error, it says mat form should have a mat form module. And the reason for that is we need to go and import some other libraries again. Let's go to that. So for that, did I give mat form modules? Yes. Then after that, let's go and give our app login dashboard is already there. Browser is there. App routing is there. Browser is there. Okay. Browser module is not there. Why? Okay, browser module is there, browser animation, forms module is there, mat form module is not here. Mat form module is there. Then the other modules which are required, for instance, I need my app routing. So this is the only thing, and this thing is required only first time that you are working on it. After it is all set, you don't have to do anything on top of it. Okay, so let's go and just add, reroute it so that I have mat form modules over here. And then inside my app module, I have this, and inside import, I need to have this browser app routing, browser animation, then browser animation module, then forms module, and then mat form field module. This thing should come down over here. The path actually matters, what series or what location it is in. And then after that, I need to have, let's also give mat input module. This over here, mat input module. Let's go and have a look at it again. Okay, the font size, right? Okay. Anyhow, in the class, we're going to see it only, but fine. Okay, now that everything is done, I indeed see two forms coming up over here, but along with that, I also need a button. So let's go to button. Let's go and take, let's say this example, a raised button, right? So this part here, raised over here, I just need to go and give something like this here. Let's go to login over here, login component HTML, this, and let's call it as login. Now at least I should see three things coming up: ID, password, and login. But this button doesn't look good. And the reason for that is, again, API mat button module, we didn't import it to our library. App module here, mat button here, mat button here. If everything is done, at least I should see a better looking mat button or material button. Let it load. And indeed, I see a better looking button over here, login. Okay. So now the concept is, if I go and give ID and password over here and I click on login, some things should happen. What should happen? Let's go and talk about it. So first thing, this login component HTML over here, if at all you want to go and communicate with any of the modules or any of the backend or any of the TS file, this concept is known as your NG model. NG model in short means whatever data goes in HTML also goes in TS, and by that logic, whatever goes in TS can also go and hit your backend. So first thing that we will do is, let's go and put, apart from input, let's put something as NG model equals to, let's say, ID over here. And I will say the name of this field is ID. And the same thing, let's put it over here. Actually, this was ID, this is password, fine. Password. But now I need to go and define it inside my TS file also. So what I'll do is I'll say that I will have something as ID, which is string. I will have something as password, which again is a string. Okay, if everything is good, I should see these things coming up over here. ID as a string, password as a string, and that is fine. Let's just save it over here. And over here now the error. Let's load it again. And the error that happens is app component, this is a string, and it doesn't identify that. Now, there are two ways to fix it. First of all, either go and give it a string and say it is this. Okay, so just go and define it as an empty string, because you are just calling it a string, it doesn't understand what it is. So either call it as any string, as an empty string, or just go and make it as any. Either of the things will work. Next part, my login button is going to do certain operations. So let's say if someone does a click on this, you will be calling a function which will be something as login func1 or login function 1 over here. This function here, and login function 1 over here. And let's just do a console.log of ID that was entered. And let's say this is this.id. And whatever the password the user is entering goes inside password or pwdy, because whatever my user enters over here, it goes inside ID. This basically will hit login function 1. It goes inside login function 1, where it prints the ID and the password for you. Okay, fine. If we are good till here, let's see. Let's say I give ID 111 or ID 111 and password as password 11. If I click on login, you see ID is also coming and password is also coming. If you are set till here, then your Angular is almost completed also. Now there will be very small things which are done. The biggest problem that you will face inside Angular is setting it up. Okay, now anyhow, just to see that it actually works, let's go and give it as ID 2 and password as 2 and login, and I indeed see that part coming up now. Which means I know that my Angular is integrated, my ID and password is also properly present. If this part is done, now comes, we will proceed with it after we go and get started with our backend now. So backend we will do, but while we are doing backend, let's go and talk about MongoDB cloud, because I want to go and create my database inside MongoDB. For that, sign in. If you're not, you can click on try for free, give your email ID over there. It should take you to MongoDB shell where you can go and create your database. For me, I will go and log in with Google over here and give my ID and password, whatever is. Okay, that's strange. Okay, I don't have it on this browser. No worries. Or even if I do it, fine. Okay, let it happen. Let's start from the beginning only. So try free. Sign up with Google. Give your Gmail ID over here. And it should automatically go and sign up for you and click on submit. If this is done, your MongoDB cloud at least is set up. And now from your part, let it happen. Will take some time, and then you can go and create a sample or a simple database. Let's go and try that also first of all. Anything is fine, doesn't matter much. Front-end part is almost there. Back-end one we are doing in some time. At least the database will start, so that even before we start the database, we at least have it. Okay. Shared cluster we are doing because we want to work on the free cluster as of now. Next thing, you can choose any of the cloud provider. Honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference, but because we are on a free cluster, we cannot use Mumbai in Azure. Because we are on a free cluster, we can use Mumbai in GCP or inside AWS. I prefer AWS because my complete infra is on AWS. So for that reason, I'm choosing Mumbai. Additional settings, because you are in the free tier, you don't have much option. If you had gone for M2 or M5 cluster, where it would have charged you this much, you had more options. And the cluster name, I'm naming it as cluster 0 only because I just want to go and create my first simple cluster. If this is all done, my cluster should be created in some time. Let it happen. This takes time to get created. In the meantime, let's go and start with our backend code. So for that, what I will do is ls over here, cd backend, ls over here, and I will go and create my code. The code over here will be creating my code for Node.js. For that, first thing, let's go and do is let's call this code as backend only, fine. npm init or initialize the Node.js repository. For that package name, let's call it as login backend version 0.0. Just can leave it like that also, it doesn't matter much. Just put yes over here. If you do this, now you are going to see some things coming up in your code, which will be over here. Inside backend, you see package.json. First thing that you will do is just go and give this name. If it is index.js over here, no, ensure that you create the file name also as index.js only. Okay. Or if you have not created anything, that is also fine. Just go and create a file. Let's call it as app.js. Some people call it as server.js. Depends entirely on you how you want to do. Next thing, because I am working on MongoDB at the moment, so I need a library of Mongo, isn't it? What I choose is Mongoose. You are free to choose your library. If you go for Mongoose JS npm package, this is the library which is used the most. Last week itself, 1.7 million downloads of this library happened. So obviously that's the library that I'm also going to use. For that, here npm install and put -- save so that it will save it. By the way, it's the same thing that we did inside Angular. You are going to see a lot of similarities between them. Next part, I have to work on Node.js with a library. That library is Express. When I said mean, MEAN, M was Mongo, which we have part of seen. E is Express, which we are talking about now. A is Angular, which we have kind of seen. Node, which we are working on right now. So what I need to do now is also install the library of Express over here. Okay, -- save will save it inside my package.json file over here. Over here, like you see Mongoose, and sometime you will also see Express coming up. So what I will do is let it load up. In the meantime, while it is doing that, let's go and at least start coding our backend servers inside Node.js. First thing, let's install or use Mongoose, where, let's say, where Mongoose equals to require, and the package name is Mongoose. Okay, and let's also go and give my Express.js code. This is a bit tricky, so just see it is done in this order only. Okay, where Express equals to, again, this is required only once in the lifetime of your code. After this, you can go and create 10,000 APIs one after the other. It doesn't matter much. So remember that you have to go and do this once, but once at least you have to do. Next, course equals to, let's just copy this. Course equals to require course. Then I'll call a variable app, which will be using Express. And then I want this to work on my port number, and that port number will be, I'll say, either I will send you port. If I don't send you anything, I want you to work on port number 8000. Next, messages will be coming to me via JSON. For that, I need a body parser library, which will be inside body-parser. Okay. Next, I will be using my body parser where I say that, see, the data might come to me in JSON method. So be ready for that. And I will also say body parser, just in case someone is sending you URL encoded data, be ready for that also. Dead. And okay, be ready for that also. So, and just close the bracket. Okay, put it in one line to not confuse ourselves. And next, I also need to use my course library, or else it will block the request coming from unsafe locations, which are not HTTPS or any external locations, which I don't want at the moment. In future, you might want to remove it. And finally, you have to go and work on a port where it will be get and port. And that's it. You have created your library of Express. These all steps are required in this order only. Changing it will ensure that your library doesn't work, which you don't want also, obviously, isn't it? Next part. MongoDB by now should be all set up for me. Still creating. Okay, fair enough. Next thing, I have to ensure that I am making a connection with the test database, isn't it? So for that, let's go and create a user which can go and make a connection with my database. Before that, this MongoDB, do you want everyone to access? Obviously, no, right? Only your IP to access. So let's call this over here and call it home. So that even if you now have the ID and the password and still you want to go and access it, you cannot, because only my IP is set up over here. After we deploy it to AWS, we are also going to go and give the IP address of AWS over here. Next thing, who can create my or access my database? Let's go create a user. Let's call this user as user1, and let's MongoDB create a password for me. And let's just note down the password for our reference. So let's say password is this, and the username is user1. That is fine, I don't need it. And let's go and create clone add user. Doing this will go and create a user for you by, and you can access that by this particular password provided your IP is set. And now comes the interesting part. Inside your SQL database, you have something as a table structure. Mongoose does not have a table structure, first thing. However, there is nothing stopping you from creating something as a MongoDB model. More of it inside our actual class where we go and talk about data modeling or MongoDB model. Okay, so we are telling that we expect the data to come in this format over here. In short, MongoDB model, you can consider it as your table structure. So how to do that? For that, let's go and create a folder over here by the name of models. Inside that, let's call it as something maybe login.js. And inside my login.js, I need to go and create my complete code, which is first of all, mongoose equals to require mongoose here. Then I need to give the schema equals to mongoose dot schema. Okay. Schema, and let's go and make a connection. So I'm saying, hey Mongo, I'll create a connection where I will go and create it by mongoose dot create connection, inside which I need to pass the URL. Let's call Mongo URL, which is a string which we will be using it in some time. I'm saying, hey, I'll be creating a Mongo URL actually, and this URL over here, and I will use the new URL. This is a new thing that has come up in Mongo 6 few days back. So if you don't do that, it's not going to work. And use unified topology as 2. Apart from that, how Node.js works is it will either error out or it will success, either it will error out or it will make a connection with it. And in this case, I will be left with two things. Either it will error out. If it errors out, I will say if error, and let's just log it console.log error in connecting to DB because of error over here. And else I will go and say console.log connection successful. And now comes the interesting part. Let's go and create our schema. Login schema equals to new schema where you will have something as ID, which is string, something as password, which again is a string. And let's go and use it. Module.exports equal to, I will be creating a connection with what? With this variable over here, connection.model, and with what? With this one over here. And what here? So I'll be calling it as login schema. You can call it login schema, doesn't matter. Or just want to call it login, you can call it login also, doesn't matter much. Okay, so it eventually it boils down to the fact that I have created a model where I'll be using two things as ID and password over here. And if everything is good, I can make a connection, but where is the connection string, right? So connection string MongoDB itself is going to tell you. So for that, go to databases over here. Click on the connect button over here. How do you want to connect your application, right? How? Just copy this code as it is and put it over here. One thing is missed out over here, the password. So just replace it with your actual password, which we had created, which was actually this. User1, this and this. And if everything is good, your MongoDB should actually make a connection with your code. For that, we will have to go and call my model that we created. Let's go and do that. So let's go and call it as model, and let's call it as where login equals to require, and where is my code? Inside models, and what is the name? Login. Okay. Now at this point of time, at least let's go once and run our code, right? So nodemon app.js, and at least it should give me some error. First error, cors not found. No worries. npm install cors --say. By the way, why didn't it say cors not found? Because if you go to your package.json fast, you will see cors is not here. But inside my code, I had required cors. That is the error why it told cors error. Fine, let's go and run it again. And it says connection successful. But then what is the proof that this indeed is true? So let's do a thing. Let's go to network access over here and delete it and delete it. My IP is no longer added, no? Nodemon app.js. And let's run it again. Now it still says connection successful. So is it actually successful or not? First thing, let's go over here. It is saying configuring database. Hold on for some time. By the way, it is only taking time because this is the free tier. If it were not free, no, it would have happened comparatively faster. Shouldn't take this much time also. Okay, anyways, it is done now. So let's go back and make a connection. It's going to wait for quite some time because now the IP address isn't added. So now it's going to error out after the timeout is set, which generally is 60 to 90 seconds. So now the connection is not going to happen anyways. Okay, so that's the proof that, okay, indeed it was working. So let's not waste time because we have a lot to do. So add IP address over here, add current IP address, and let's call it as home address and click on confirm, stop it, go and run it again. In some time, it should say connection successful. In the meantime, people can also go and create APIs, right? So what I'll do is I'll just go and create two basic APIs. One will be to add user and one will be to authenticate the user. So if anyone does a post request on my API, which is add user, what is going to happen is they will have two things. They can either have the request or they can have the response. Okay. And now here my complete code is going to start. And what is that? This part is important. So just have a look at it. First thing, whatever data or request I am getting inside my API will come inside REQ, and the response that I want to send it is inside RES. Remember that. So what I will do is, first of all, let me add a response object. So let me call it as response, which I will say is an empty array. Okay. Next, I expect ID to come. So if a user is signing up, I have two things which I require, right? ID and password. So if in case a user is signing up, I need to have two things: ID, which will come in from the request. So req.body.id. And second thing that I will have is my password here, pwd password and password. And now the simple part is to go and write this data inside my library. How to do that? For that, let's call something as login object, which is not important. What is more important for me is login, where I am saying someone will be passing your ID, and that ID is this, and someone will be passing your password, and that password is this, and eventually you have to save it. So MongoDB, go and save it. And if you save it, there are two things which can happen. Either it will be successful. So the success response I am giving over here, or it will basically error out. Okay, or it will error out. If it errors out, first of all, you tell me the error, what went wrong. So console.log, and let's say error in registration, and the error is err. But at least I need to tell the user also know that it errored out. So what I will do is I will go and send the message over here. Dot message equals to error in registration, and I need to send this response back to the user, which is nothing but my object that I have created over here. Okay. And if at all it is successful, then to no worries only. Okay. Also, let's do a thing. Let's also give the status as error over here. So I'm sending two things. First is the status, second is the message. If everything is good, then to there is no question, only status is success, message registered successfully, and I'm sending the response. So this basically will go and add the user for me, this particular API. How does the API actually work? Let's go and have a look at it. For that, let me just open Postman basically, so that I can show you how it works. Okay. While it is happening, let's go and have a look at our code over here. It says connection successful, which means indeed my code, at least the connection is successful. And by the way, if my connection is successful, my database over here should have certain records inside itself. So first of all, let's have a look. The connections that I created is there, and I have some data incoming and outgoing. So your graph or metric is going to show up immediately. Next thing, go to your cluster over here and have a look at my collections. If everything is good, I should see my collection of logging at least coming up over here, which should have both the ID and the password present. You see, login. Something is created indeed, logins, but it doesn't have any record, isn't it? And why? Because I didn't create only in the first place. So let's go and create that first of all. So for that, what I will do is, let's go here, open Postman. Just bringing it up on the screen for you. Okay, here it is. So my API name at the moment is add user, right? So I'll say that I'm hitting you localhost add user, and the port number anyhow is 8000. And inside this, I need two things, ID and the password, right? ID is user one, password is password one. Let's go and use Postman to send the request. If everything is good, it's fine. If not, it gives an error like over here. Login OBJ is not a function at this particular. By the way, it would have shown you here also. Login OBJ is not a function. Error at line number 29. Let's go and fix that. So where are you? 29, this part. So it says this login OBJ which you are using is not a function. And why is that, first of all? So the reason for that is when you have given a object over here, you are saying that I want to go and do a login with this. In this case, if you are doing it, first of all, let's go to this and have a look at my schema over here. So login schema is this over here, login is here, connection is here, and my connection is successful, connection is all good, and it will create it over here. Fair enough. Next part over here is this. And Mongoose version, let's see, it is 616, which is perfectly fine, which means the problem is over here itself. Now, to solve this problem, what do we do? So if you see, it is telling you that I am creating something as this object over here, where I want to go and do a login, which I am getting it from here, and I'm trying to do a save on top of it, and then basically it is erroring out or it is being successful. So for that, let's go and do one thing. First of all, let's go and introduce promises to our code. What is a promise? So promise is something like, I will go and create a function. Let's call it as var add user function, where I will say this code is going to return a promise to you. Promise is like in Java people, you have then and catch all, no, same thing over here. It will go and run in a specific sequence. So promise here, resolve, it will either resolve or it will reject. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is it's going to give you some things. This is one promise. And then let's send another as send response. Okay. And let's remove this one now. And this is login.js, and is anything else also? My first database, this is all good. This is all good. Okay, fine. So here, this one is going to go and add the, so I have something else, let's call it as a response object. I have ID, which is nothing but request.body.id. I have the password. And now over here, let's go and create my user login object, which is nothing but, let's call it as user login. Actually, it'll be better for us because login, the name of the API is also user login. So it might take it as a keyword over there. Okay. New, what was my this? User login. And inside this, I will have two things. I will have the ID and I will have the password. I believe it is ID and password, and here also it is ID and password only. Fair enough. This is done. If this is done, then this can either go in two ways, or either it can be successful, in which case I'll anyhow do a resolve, or it will error out, in which case I will go and say console.log error in add user, which is nothing but error, and also I will do a reject. If everything is good, here I will send my status as success and message as and response.json and this part over here. Okay. Now, two promises are going to work. One is this and one is this. And if at all it errors out, let's go and go error. Okay, error anyhow we have logged in only, no? In that case not required. Just let's go and create this dot status equals to err, or let's give it as error only. And I am also passing something as message, isn't it? So this message is whatever you get in error over here, and this part over here. Okay. Now let's go and have a look at it. So where is Postman? Over here, I am giving this and this. This is my library, connection successful. Let's go run it. And it says user registered. Now, if it says user registered, what is the proof that it is registered? So let's go back over here and refresh the data. And I indeed see a user one and password one coming up, but let's go and change it. So instead of user one and two, let's only give, okay, let's give user two and let's say password two and send. If everything is good, go here, go here, go here, refresh the data, and you will see user two and password two also coming up, which means indeed my local machine is configured with my MongoDB cloud. Now comes the next part. User registration is done, isn't it? Now we will also go and create another API where we will go and validate the user. Okay, so this and validate the user. Okay, in this case also I will anyhow get the request and the ID and the password. Only thing that changes over here is I will go and what was the name of my this user login? I will go and do a find one where I will say that, see, the user is sending me the ID, isn't it? You just have to go and tell me the password of it. So what will happen is after this, it will give me the response. Let's say response is res. Okay, and if it doesn't give me the response, again, same old story. Let's go and just copy and paste it from here. Error in authentication. So again, have a look. The user anyhow has created the IDs and the password, which anyhow is over here, ID and password. Now let's say a user is sending me an ID and a password. So first I will go to database and I will say database, user ID is user one. Please tell me the password for it. And then I will validate it with the password that the user has sent me. These two things have to happen in this order only. Okay. So first of all, let's take password from database is nothing but response one dot whatever the password database is sending, and I will just go and validate it from here with the password that the user is sending me. If the password that I see from the database and the password that the user is sending is good, I'll say find resolve, else I will say reject invalid password. Now remember, in real time we don't save the password as plain text over here. We hash it, we sort the password, we hash the passwords, and that's how we actually do that. But right now at the moment we are just putting it as plain text because we don't want to complicate it. In your class I am going to tell you how to sort it and hash it. That is important. Or else if anyone gets access to your database, all the ID and passwords are leaked out, which we don't want. Okay, so here let's just go and call it as validate user func or function. And let's do the same here. Validate user function, which will basically send the response. And if everything is good, it will say user validated. And if it is not, it will say error in authentication. And over here, status will be error. Now let's just go and check it out if it works. So let's go and give this with validate user over here. So let's say I go and say user 2 and password 2. It says user validated. Let's test it out with that incorrect password. It says invalid password. Then let's try it out with password 11 where it says invalid password. And let's try with actual one, user 1 and password 11 invalid, but user 1 and password 1 again is valid. Okay, so my APIs are all good and they should be working. I am pretty much done with it. Now comes the next part. Now the only thing which is required is to go and integrate my UI part with my backend part. Okay, so whatever is in my UI has to go as it is and it has to integrate with my backend. So at least first let's go and deploy the code into production. or inside AWS, because that is what AWS people are waiting for. So first, let's go and deploy that. So my code is all set over here, isn't it? Everything is good. Let's go and deploy it to my machine. So for that, let's log into AWS. And because I want the code inside my local machine, what I will do is I will take help of S3 over here to download the code. In real time, you can also take help of GitHub, by the way. GitHub, I am okay, maybe I take, okay, GitHub I'm not taking. The reason for that is because my code has the password over here, no, this password. This I don't want to send to GitHub. That is why I am not using it. For that reason, I am using S3. But in reality, we use Bitbucket and GitHub to actually deploy the code to production. That also we are going to see how to work on the pipelines and how to auto deploy it. But for now, my S3 should be enough for me and my EC2 to deploy that actual server. So for this, what I will do is let's go and click on create bucket here. And let's call this bucket as maybe FullStack -demo, and enabled, and public access obviously is blocked, and click on create bucket. Okay, and let the bucket come up. Inside this, I'll just go and drag and drop my code, whatever I had in backend. Okay, so entire thing except node modules and package log. And the reason for that is this automatically the code will pick up anyways. Once I do npm install, it will automatically pick up. Only these 3 files are there. Those of you who have done Docker now understand app login and package.json. That is the reason why we used to go and create it in that way only. We only used to have package.json and app.js. Okay, upload. Anyways, let it get uploaded. In the meantime, we'll go to our instances and we will launch our actual server where we'll install everything. So for that, let's take Ubuntu 20 and I'll choose a ARM machine this time. And let's go for a T4G small or micro should be good. Here, launch this. Why T4G micro? Because that is the cheaper instance which is available for me. Though I could have used T3A micro also. Here, let's call it as our backend server. Okay, and let's make a connection with that. Okay. And yes. Now, if I were working on Docker, I don't need to give all these commands, but because right now I am not working on Docker, so I'll just go and install Node.js manually. How? Pretty straightforward, actually. Just go and search for Node.js and Ubuntu. This here, I want to do it on Ubuntu, right? Here, click here, and it should automatically install Node.js for you. So let's go and get the commands one after the other. I'm working on Node.js 16, let's say. First command, done. Second command, done. And also the build libraries. Let it happen. In the meantime, I also have to go and install few packages required to run this particular thing. So what I need to do is I need to go fast to my IAM, create a IAM user so that I can download all these things inside my code actually. Okay, so for that, let's go start working on IAM. And create a user. All these things will happen in parallel actually in real time. So first of all, let's go and make a temporary folder over here known as code. This will actually have my code, whatever I have inside S3 bucket. But to do that, I will have to go and create a IAM user which has access to my bucket. So there, add user. Let's call it as temp-CLI, programmatic access, the permissions. I want to give it access to S3 and for now all tags, review, create. While it is happening, let's go and install AWS CLI over here. While it is happening, let it happen. Okay, done. Next, AWS configure. Access key ID is this. Secret access key is this. This is AP South 1. This is none. That is fine. And I need to go and do a sync of my code, which is inside my bucket. And what was the bucket name? FullStack demo. And sync it to this local. If everything is done, I have my code over here, all the things, which means I can also go and do an npm install at this moment. Done. And now I just have to go and run this command and it gives me error. And why that error is because classic Ubuntu error, you don't have access to these libraries. To help you out, what I have done is inside my repository, I have already jotted down the steps for you, what you can take. So go for Angular starter and just take help of all these commands over here. This part we have done, no? Ubuntu Node 12 and this. So let's just go paste it as it is. This, 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 this. And if that is done, you might want to go and run that command again to confirm if it actually is working now. Only to realize it is. Now, I want my code to always run. So even if I close this terminal, my code or my server should work. So Docker people, I'm talking about the daemon, but others just know that this code is working in background. So it simply means, let's say you shut down. Okay, shutdown is different. You just go and put your machine to hibernate. Does it mean task manager will stop? No, task manager is still there, because it is a background process or daemon process. So for that, I have used something as PM2 over here. So PM2, you just have to go and give the code over here, app.js, and it will automatically go and do everything for you. The first thing that you will see over here is the basic error. And that error is, it doesn't say MongoDB connected. And the reason for that is MongoDB over here doesn't have the IP address. This is only connecting with my database, isn't it? My local database. To connect it with AWS, I will have to go add the IP address and give the IP address of my EC2 instance. Over here, AWS people, Elastic IP. Others, I will just go and use this IP over here. This here, and let's call it AWS machine. And if everything is good, now let's go and do. So first of all, it errored out, right? Could not connect to any server. One common reason is you are trying to whitelisted, make sure, blah, 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 blah. Anyhow, if everything is good, let's PM2 restart all and PM2 logs. And let's check for ourselves. Okay, by the way, it can show you old logs also. So PM2 flush and do a PM2 restart all. Flush will remove all the logs and do a logs now. Now, at least in some time, it should say database connected. Again, it is not saying because it is into pending state as of now. Let this part happen first of all, and it says connection successful. But then what is the proof that the connection is successful? For that, what I will do is take the IP address. Earlier, I was pointing it to my local, isn't it? Here, now instead of localhost, I will actually point it to this server and send, only to realize it doesn't work still for me. And the reason for that is this particular port number has to be whitelisted inside AWS also. Next part, security groups over here. And inbound, and also allow that particular port number 8000 and allow it from anywhere. Save. Now let's see if it works. Cancel it and this, and it says user validated. Let's put it as user2 and it says invalid password, and I say password 2 and it says validated, which means this is the IP that I am looking for. And now my server is all set. I don't even need this terminal. That you see is the beauty of PM2 and Node.js. Not required. Remove it. I don't require anything. My servers are working the way they should be, which means at this point of time, I can also go and remove my IAM user over here. Close. And remember, the code never went to any public repository. It was always inside AWS only. This here, delete and type the name of the user, which is temp.cli. Alternatively, if you want, you can also go and remove the bucket also. Not required. The code is still going to work the way it should be. Let's do it only anyhow. First here, empty. Done. And now go and delete the bucket also. This here, delete. Boom. Bucket is gone. No code is anywhere, but still, even if you try to hit it from Postman, you are going to get a response. Okay, this is how the servers are actually working. Somewhere in the background, they are working and they are getting integrated with MongoDB, which is completely different altogether. Okay, now let's go back to our last part of the story. Backend is done, no more required, thank you. Now the only thing that is required is integrating my Angular with my backend servers, and that's it, we are done. So let's start with the last phase now. This thing, okay, IAM not required, button not required, this is required, MongoDB not required, not required, AWS close it, not required, not required, not required, nothing. Now, the moment I hit the login page, it has to call my server. Which server? This server. And it will validate if everything is good or not. If it is, it will say successful. If it is not, it will give me the error. Let's get started with it. Okay. First thing, let's go back to our front end. Here, login and TS, only to realize that this function was indeed working, right? This was giving me my ID and password. Now, the only thing required is to send a HTTP request to my particular server. This request is going via HTTP, isn't it? Postman, HTTP, it was going. So I just have to go and use HTTP, though actually it can be HTTPS also. AWS people, Route 53, ELBs, Global Accelerator. This is what I'm referring to. Others, right now, because we are just doing the basic things, we are just worried about HTTP. So what I have to do is simply send the HTTP request to my Node.js server from front end to back end. But for that, I have to go to app module first of all, or else it will not work. And I will have to go and add the entries for my HTTP module. That entry, by the way, is something known as import, and it is Angular common and HTTP, and it is HTTP client and module. And needless to say, this obviously goes down inside my imports over here. Okay, and because this has to actually send the information, so here I will go and import my HTTP library. And how? So for that, okay, by the way, you might also want to go and have a look at this Angular HTTP to understand it better. In the class anyhow, I'm going to tell you a lot about this. But if in case you are interested in knowing this right now itself, you can do that. Import HTTP, and it is going to show you all the libraries which are required for you to run. Okay, this is what I had done some time back, HTTP client module. Okay, and then it says that you also have to go and give these two things there. So let's go to our code over here and just paste it as it is. HTTP client, and it also says that you have to go and give these things over there. So let's go and give these things. And it also says that if in case you have to work on it, what you have to do is you have to go and take help of a constructor actually. Okay. What is a constructor? In short, if you need to go and work on any of the services, you have to take the help of the constructor. So what I will do over here is I will say that say Angular in some time, something by HTTP will actually come up. And if they come up now, you have to go and do this. Okay, now comes the last thing. We have to hit the backend on some URL, right? What is the URL? It is a string. And what is the actual string? That we already had it from here, no? Postman. This string over here. So I am saying that, see, someone will be hitting you on this particular string. And if I have to send the request, it will have two things. First will be the URL. Second will be the request object which I am sending. Third will be the response object which I am using. So let's go and create a request object, which I am saying will be anything, which will be an empty, and then something as response over here, which will be anything over here. Now, the next thing is I'll say if anyone hits the ID over here, this is nothing but this dot ID that I had already sent. And if someone is hitting password, this is nothing but password. By the way, why do I need this ID and password in request? Because inside my Postman, if you remember, my API is expecting two things, ID and password, right? So for that reason, I need these two variables. So my request object is all set at the moment. The only thing that is required now is dot do a post, and where to do the post on URL. This dot URL and URL and based on this particular object. And if at all this happens, it will wait. No, means it is not like you send a message to it, it will straight away send. It will wait for some time. I'll say, dude, wait for some time. And whenever you get the response, just add it to data. And now I had already created the response object right here. So I'll just say that this dot response object equals to data. And if you remember what we did over here, we had two status which were coming. Either it was success or it was error, right? Two status. So based on this status, I will make a decision now. And how? I will say if dot status equals to success. Right now I'm just logging it, and sometime I will show you the toaster also. Hey, over here I am saying console.log login successful. Else I will just do a console.log and I will say login failed. And if everything is good, let's go and check it out. So for that here, logging is enabled. Fine. My first user, I gave user one and password was password one, I believe. And it says login successful. Instead of password one, let's give two password one. It says login failed. But it says over here, no, I don't want it here. Rather, I want it as a beautiful message for me. So let's go back to our material. Here, and this you might have seen also inside your phones, especially Android phones, what I'm going to show you now. This thing is something, where is it? Snack bar. Have a look at it. This thing over here, no? You see this part coming up, this thing. This is what we are going to do anyways, okay? But for that, I will first have to go and import this or else it won't work out. So app module, this here, and next, if I actually have to use it, go to examples and let's say I am giving something like this one, okay? So for that, this part here, TS, I have to import this inside my local service, which is login component TS here. And then I'll be telling that, see, someone will be coming to you, constructor, someone will be coming to you with this part. Okay. And now easy things. This here and this here. Now, if at all it is successful, just give the status as it is. And this becomes message. What it means, just hold on for a moment, you will understand it. And this console.log is not required. We will remove it after some time. Let's go back to our login page back. And let's say I give user 1 and something wrong. It says error, invalid password. If I give the proper password. Okay, this was also wrong. My password 1 was correct. Okay, success. Which means my Angular code is now integrated with my backend code. In real time, it is working on the APIs. Let's just go and make it better. Let's remove the console.login, not required. And the last thing that is left for me now is to go and deploy this complete thing inside AWS. For that, first of all, I will have to go and build the binaries or the libraries or the complete code which can be deployed. For that, ng build --prod -aot. This is the Angular command. In the meantime, let's go back to our AWS S3, correct, and create a bucket. And this, let's call it as login website -demo -login ACL. And this is a website, isn't it? So it has to be public in nature. This part here and create bucket. Now let it come up. This part here, this over here. This has to be a public website inside AWS. So for that, properties, static website hosting, enable, and the home page is index.html and save. Next part, anyone should go and be able to access this bucket or the objects. Why? Because websites anyone can go and access, isn't it? So for that, first of all, ACL over here, edit and give anyone access to list. Remember, they can only view the content. They can't go and add anything on top of it. If this is done, next part that I have to go and give is my bucket policy here. So here I need to go and create the policy now. Good for me that it is already set now. So let's call it make public, and the principal for me is everything. Effect is allow. Action that I want to give is only one, S3 : so that anyone can go and view. And resource is what? Resource is my ARN. ARN I'll have to create now. Fine. ARN, if you had gone inside S3, it would have been easier for you. You could have copied the ARN, but fine, we'll make it anyways. : and my bucket name is this thing over here, and star. This should be good. Okay. Anyways, if this is all good, I'll also have to go and change the course configuration, because if I don't do that, my website is not going to work. So for that, actually, this will take a lot of time. Let me just get it from somewhere. Hold on. Now, if you need this, no, it is all present here. AWS S3 bucket course configuration. AWS themselves would have created it for you. That you just have to go and give this as it is. Over here and here. Example 1, example 2, everything they have given you over here. Okay, just have to go and copy paste it. Like here, this part here, and let's paste it. So I'm saying put that done, save changes. Okay. Now, if this thing is done, and my code is already built, which is over here. The only thing which is left is, and the last thing for the day is front end, this distribution, whatever goes inside this goes inside this. And remember to make it public. Which basically means that if everything is done now, let's go back here and let's go to properties. And let's go down to our bucket endpoint, and actually we don't need anything else. You should see your login page coming up here. You can give user 1 and let's say password 1 and login. It will say success, password 1, 2. Login, it says error. I am also putting it in the chat window. It should be available for the next 1 hour if in case you are interested to go and test it out. But in short, this is how it actually works. Going back, S3 has my data, website, content, Angular, HTML. At the end of the day, everything is HTML. What I did was, first I went to MongoDB, created a cloud database. Second, I went to Angular, created a simple login form over here. By the way, this is also not required. Now you can close up everything. Nothing else is required. Everything is deployed to the cloud. This is how it works. So going back, database, MongoDB, AWS, Mumbai, user, access to all DBs, done. Angular, install Angular, forms, big thing, input, material, add the buttons, add this, done. Third, Node.js, code, request libraries, Mongoose, npm, install. Fourth, IAM, S3 all, put Node.js code into it. Fifth, AWS EC2, install Node.js, deploy from S3 over there, done. Now at this point of time, your Node.js server is up and running. Sixth, your S3 bucket, whatever data you had inside your Angular, integrate with that backend, create the bulk, dump bulk files or whatever the deployment files are there, put it inside S3 bucket. And finally, if everything is done, it points over here. AWS people, this CloudFront Route 53 works on HTTPS. Backend, EC2, load balancers, ACM, certificates, HTTPS, end-to-end HTTPS. So now those who are into development, you don't have to worry about HTTPS, that the DevOps people or AWS people have to take care, because they have many tools at their hand like load balancers and ACMs and all, which they can do. But in short, this is how you create a full stack app in 100 minutes. You can try to access the URL by EC2 also, but if you mean this website, no, website is Angular, no, so you can't do it by EC2. But at the end of the day, EC2, you can install Angular there. Just like my machine was also local only, no. So local machine, you could have gone, installed Angular over there, work, but that takes a lot of resources. So generally it is preferred to deploy my code or front end inside S3 itself. Now, that's it for the day. This is how you go and create a full stack app. I just complicated it so that I could have shown you multiple things like S3, EC2, and MongoDB on the cloud. Make it even easier by using DocumentDB or by using DynamoDB. That's it. Okay, any other questions if you have? So we are already ahead of our time. Perfect. In that case, yes, you can divert the traffic. Exactly. It can be HTTPS traffic, HTTP traffic, endpoint, CNAME, A record, anything. Okay, fine. Let's stop over